Hello everyone, welcome to another video of the playlist SketchUp Coding for Beginners. So our today's objective will be to start coding using Ruby Code Editor instead of Ruby Console. So in the previous video we have started coding using Ruby Console, but there are many drawbacks in that editor. So we today start coding using Ruby Code Editor. So let's get started. First I'll open SketchUp Pro 2021 and I'll choose the simplest template. So let me show you some drawbacks of Ruby Console. Let's go to Window, then Ruby Console. As you can see, we have already done printing the hello world. As you can see, it only provides us one line of coding, so we cannot do other coding at once. So if we are working on some big projects, so we need hundreds and thousands of lines of code. So it actually doesn't allow us to do those coding for us. It's just for our simple understanding and doing. So Ruby Console is only for small snippets of code. So Ruby Console is generally focused on small snippets of code. So it doesn't give you much feature while coding on a big scale. So instead of using Ruby Console, what we are gonna do is we'll go to Window, then Extension Warehouse. Then we will search for an extension that is Ruby Code Editor. So I'll choose the first one. As you can see, this is a free extension and it provides much more features than the Ruby Console itself. So you can go through it if you want to look its features. And I'd like to thank Alex Rea, who is the developer of this extension. So we are going to just press on install, and yes. So this extension has been successfully installed and is now available for your use. So I'm gonna close this dialog box. As you can see, the tab has appeared here. For our easy access, we can just drag and drop in here to use the Ruby Code Editor. So there are three processes of opening Ruby Code Editor. If you have already put the Ruby Code Editor over here, you can just double click and this box appears. The next way of opening Ruby Code Editor is go to Window, then Ruby Code Editor and Ruby Code Editor. As you can see, there is a shortcut assigned for Ruby Code Editor, that is Ctrl+B button. So instead of doing all these processes, you can just press Ctrl and P simultaneously to open the Ruby Code Editor. As you can see, these three lines of coding are given by default. You'll understand what's the meaning of these three things later on, but now let me just write the same code that we used in the previous video and find what is the difference. So in Ruby Console we used to press enter to run our code, but here we press Ctrl+R button simultaneously to get the result. So it says hello world as the output. As you can see the difference, so it separates the variables and the commands with different colors so that it will be quite easier for us to understand and differentiate the variables and the commands by ourselves. So the thing that is to be printed is colored as blue, and this message box is colored as somewhat brown in color, and the UI is assigned as purple color. So it becomes quite easier for us to code, and it also provides us the flexibility to write more lines of code in over here. And you can run the command by pressing Ctrl+R, and first it will run the first line of code, and then it will run this line of code and give the result. So concluding, what we can say is that we can use Ruby Console, but it has got many drawbacks. So we usually don't use Ruby Console, and in the next videos we will always be using this Ruby Code Editor for our coding purpose. So keep learning, and thanks for watching.